Okay, it's taken me all morning. It's a beautiful sunny day outside, and you gotta sacrifice one of these kind of days to get this engine painted. That's what I'll do. So car's outside. That's the Fairlane. Let me show you what I got set up. All right, there it is. 440 is taped off. Spark plug holes are all cleaned and sealed. Everything's super clean. So I'm really hoping this paint sticks to this engine for a lot of years. Distributor holes all masked off. I tried to do a really nice job masking it. I kind of took some tips from Pete's Garage. You can look him up on YouTube. He's kind of the master of everything engines, it looks like. Ran across him a year or two ago and taken his advice pretty seriously. Although I can't compete with his perfection level, you learn from everybody. So anyhow, there's the little bike stand I made. I got everything hanging here, dipstick tube, balancer, some other part I want orange that doesn't even go to this engine. All these valve cover pieces are all lacquer thinner and cleaned just right. I'll shoot some orange on those. These dipstick tube, or dipstick I guess. Harmonic balancer pulley and bolt. Valve covers. I sacrificed my wife's Santa Claus tablecloth. Hopefully nobody tells her about that. These are just a bunch of random engine bolts. I figured I'm gonna paint them all orange. That way I got them if I need them. A few other ones I know for sure I want. And then I got a mask set up, so I'll be using that. Covered up a couple things. Got the tarp up just to keep the other half of my garage from getting too oversprayed. This is what I'm using for paint. Omni Products, epoxy primer and catalyst. This orange right there, gonna be glossy. I'm gonna go for a glossy engine. Apparently that might be a little bit not concourse, but my car is far from concourse. Some lacquer thinner my buddy gave me. I'm gonna use this to mix. Cleaned up the pickle jar, go to 2-to-1. It'll be easy in a nice straight container like this. And I'm using a Harbor Freight gun with kind of the typical Harbor Freight setup. So that's what we're gonna use. Some filters. I'm gonna take this filter out of the gun right off the bat because I think I can do it without that. If I filter it good enough with these, that should be all right. There's a bunch of instructions for using the paint and primer. I'm not a painter. I'm not a primerer. I've stayed out of that business all my life, so I know very little. So I'm using the instructions and a friend's advice, and that's what's taken me partly so long, is I just don't trust myself. So, well, there's some more instructions down here. So anyhow, that's it. I will probably not film most of this process, but if I do, I might put some of that in there. Bye. you can learn about techniques on some other video, but I just thought I'll share with you what went right and wrong. That took about 15 minutes to put a coat of primer on everything that I wanted to primer. Some things to think about. Make sure you get this thing fit to your face before you start. So by the time you got your product all mixed up, you already know how to put this thing on. You know that it's gonna fit right and it's not gonna fall off. So I practiced putting that thing on 3 or 4 times just to make sure it's easy. And I still have to do the paint here in another, I'll do it within the next half hour or something. But make sure you got that set. Make sure you have all your mixing things figured out. I spilled paint in there, or primer rather, in here. The funnel, these funnels that I was using into that jar just barely squeezed out past the little filter part. And so I spilled primer in there, no big deal, that'll clean up. A couple other things I learned was I did not get my air hose strung out before I started. So it was a tangled up mess the whole time. So make sure that. The other thing is this compressor decides to get stuck. The little capacitor will get stuck. And instead of starting like that, it will go through its cycle and it'll just go and killed all the lights in the shop. So while I'm primering everything, trying to get that done in a few minutes, like proper, my compressor's freaking out and I'm over here trying to unplug it and plug it back in and my lights were going on and off. So that was not that big a deal, but it's a good thing I wasn't painting a car, right? So anyhow, the gun, this Harbor Freight gun, is really a long setup when it gets all put together. So that whole, filter all the way up to a regulator, all the way to this, it's not very friendly to use. Getting down underneath that engine stand to paint up underneath here was tricky. I got it, but again, I'm not painting a car, so the quality doesn't have to be awesome. But even when I go to paint the orange, I want the oil pan to look nice. That's probably the most important part underneath the car. So getting smooth application of primer and paint on all these parts when they're dangling around, that's probably not ideal, but maybe it's doable. I don't know, we'll see. And then just probably when you go to paint, that the overspray from this isn't landing all over your valve covers right behind them. So I'll probably move these off to the side, do the valve covers real isolated by themselves so that the overspray from this one's not getting on that one, you know what I'm saying? Other than that, these things I knew would blow around quite a bit, and they did, but they all got covered. They're gonna be fine. And this thing worked out pretty nice. Old Missick stand with an old flathead flywheel on it. Kept this thing pretty stable. I think this is actually a good setup. Probably one of the better things I came up with. And that looks 100 times better than it has looked for years. So there's that. I got the dipstick tube primered, distributor hold down, valve cover, hardware. And this turned out really nice. Just getting in all the nooks and crannies is important. Primer's pretty forgiving, so you don't want a super thick coat of primer on there. I think I was advised by my paint buddy, and then also by my father-in-law, who's a paint man all his life. Both of those guys said, just get a coat of primer on there. Don't cover it 2 times or get a thick, heavy coat. Just give something for the paint to chemically bond to, and that's what I did. So it's definitely all covered, but I don't think it's too thick anywhere. So that's what I got. All right, we'll be painting soon. Bye. Okay, well, painting is done. I'm happy with how it looks. Looks good in the shop, so hopefully we have good results when it dries. Whew. There it is. I'm gonna leave this respirator on. Oh. Check that out. So anyhow, everything's orange. Turned out nice. I'm happy with the application. I did 4 parts paint to 2 parts catalyst. No, let me take it back. 4 parts paint, 1 part catalyst, and almost 2 parts reducer. And it seemed a little thin, like I thought it was, did I go too thin or whatever? So I added just a little bit more paint, mixed it all up and shot it.
and it turned out really nice. I don't know if you can see that or not, but those valve covers didn't look that good. I was surprised they turned out as nice as they did. I might be interested in using them now. But anyhow, this is definitely one of those jobs where if you have somebody else doing it and they don't have the, I don't know, the patience to get in all the nooks and crannies, they will miss a lot of spots. So I tried to shoot this thing from every different angle, and I think the coverage is really good, but getting back in all those spots, that's not easy. Getting underneath all the soft plugs, in between all the gasket surfaces, just to make those nice. You know, you gotta want it to be nice, otherwise you're gonna miss a ton of spots. Pretty much got 2 coats on here. Getting back behind that fuel pump, that was a little tricky. I got a little heavy there, there's a couple runs, but I think it's better to have a couple runs than it is to have bare spots in the primer, you know, so you can see primer through it. Getting all those bolts on the oil pan, underneath the oil pan, turned out really nice. All right, gonna go into town with my wife. And
all right, so we just got back from town, and I'll tell you, this thing looks fantastic. It's got a super shine on it, which is really what I was looking for. I think by the time accessories get added on, it's gonna look like every other good Charger engine or, you know, 440 that somebody's got in their car. It's gonna look respectable. I hope it runs as good as this paint looks, because that would be fantastic. And for what it's worth, I'll say the Harbor Freight job, or gun, did its job. That thing was like $15 or something, and another $5 or $6 for the filter and stuff. So that was great. Anyhow, just wanted to say thanks for watching the videos, and you guys have a good one. I'll try to keep up with my project and put some more videos out here as the next week or two comes along. Thank you. Bye.